In the spring of 2026, a 19-year-old named her name was Christina Nzita, was reported missing in Charlotte, North Carolina. 11 days later, a community member found her body on church property. Police ruled her death a suicide. Her family didn't accept that. And when you look at how many times that same sentence has been true in America over the last few years, you start to understand why. This is a story about a pattern, one that stretches from a Mississippi college campus to a Georgia public park to a Wisconsin golf course, and one that keeps circling back to a single painful question American families have been asking for over a century. Was this really what they're telling us it was? Let's start with the most recent well-documented case. In September of 2025, 21-year-old Demar Travion Trey Reed, a student at Delta State University in Mississippi, was found hanging from a tree near the campus pickleball courts. The state medical examiner ruled it a suicide. Reed's family rejected the finding outright. They said he had no history of depression, was excited to be starting college, and showed no signs, in the days before his death, of anyone in crisis. They hired civil rights attorney Ben Crump, commissioned an independent autopsy, and pushed the university and police to release any video footage connected to the scene. The NAACP publicly said it viewed the initial no foul play finding with what it called reasonable skepticism, citing the broader pattern of racially motivated violence the organization says it continues to track nationally. The case was referred to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for review. As of the most recent public reporting, toxicology results remained pending. Just months later, in February of 2026, 21-year-old Kyle Basinga was reported missing from Atlanta and found dead, hanging from a tree in a Cobb County park. Police said witnesses saw him walk into the wooded area alone, and the department's chief said investigators found no signs anyone else was involved, while also acknowledging publicly that he understood the case had, in his words, created a real emotional response, and that he didn't dismiss the historical weight the community was reacting to. Local residents pushed back regardless. One resident, speaking to a local news crew, put it plainly. Given the history of this country, she said she didn't believe a young black man had done that to himself. 2 months after that, Torrance Tory Medley was found hanging from a tree on a golf course in Wisconsin. Once again, police moved to rule it a suicide before the investigation had fully concluded. A sequence that, by that point, had become achingly familiar to people who'd been following these cases. And then there's Christina Nzita, the case we opened with, reported missing in Charlotte in late April, found on May 8, 2026, on property belonging to a local church. Her death, too, was ruled a suicide by police. Advocates and family raised the same unanswered questions that had followed nearly every case before hers. Limited public information, a rushed feeling conclusion, and an old, specifically American echo that's hard to ignore once you notice it. That echo has a name and a documented history. Researchers who study the legacy of lynching in the United States have found something disturbing in the data. The areas of the country where terror lynchings were most common historically still show measurable effects today. In economic opportunity, in how capital punishment is applied, in the underlying relationship between black communities and the legal systems meant to protect them. This isn't a case of people reaching for a comparison that isn't there. It's a pattern that researchers have been able to trace directly, decades later, in the data itself. Some of the earlier cases in this pattern go back further and are worth remembering here too, because family members in each one raised concern that still sound remarkably current. In 2001, a Texas man named Clarence Otis Cole was found hanging from a pine tree with an extension cord around his neck. His family said he was a Sunday school teacher with a daughter and a graduation to look forward to. And they said the suicide note authorities showed them didn't match his handwriting. In 2013, Alfred Wright was found dead in a wooded area in Sabine County, Texas. Officials called it an accidental overdose, but an independent autopsy the family commissioned found trauma to his head and neck. And in Lubbock, Texas, a man named Michael Lynch who had relocated specifically to escape ongoing harassment from a group of white men in his previous town, was found hanging on a school campus. His family said that when they asked to see his suicide note and the full medical examiner's findings, they were refused. None of these families got the transparency they were asking for. Several are still asking. It's important to be honest about what we don't know here too. Investigators in more than one of these cases have said publicly that early speculation, amplified quickly on social media, can outpace the actual evidence, and that their responsibility is to follow forensic findings, not public pressure, in either direction. That's a fair position for law enforcement to hold, but it doesn't fully answer why, case after case, families are describing the same experience. Rushed rulings, withheld documentation, and a refusal to treat their questions as anything other than an inconvenience. What ties all of these cases together aren't proof of what happened to any one person. It's the fact that generation after generation, Black families in America have had to ask the same impossible question after finding out how a loved one died, suicide or something else, and have had to fight again and again just to be taken seriously while asking it. If you have information related to any of the ongoing cases mentioned here, tip lines for each department will be listed in the description below. This is one of those episodes without a clean ending, because the pattern itself hasn't ended either. We'll keep updating this story as these investigations develop. Next time, another file, another name worth remembering.